We are at part 3 of the 100 game series. I did ones a few years ago, and then more recently I did 100 games of twos, and now we are here, the final episode in this 3-part series. Now, if you tuned in last time, you will have seen basically what this is all about. I document my wins, my losses, my MMR throughout, and everything I learned along the way. Once again, I should say that the advice in this video is not rank specific, and that you can use the advice to some degree at each rank. Let's get into it. I began this journey at 1495 MMR. And let me tell you now, I am much worse at 3s than I am at 2s. But one of the very first things that you learn when you play a lot of 3s is that now that there are 2 extra people on the field, there is much less boost on the field for you to use. And for this reason, I learned very early on that maintaining momentum was one of the key factors in 3s if you want to stay relevant in the gameplay. Now, yes, while there is still the same amount of boost pads on the field, you often have very little time to get them before someone else takes them. This means you need to be good at both conserving your boost and keeping your speed up without your boost. Now, when it comes to conserving your boost, there are many times in a game where players will use boost unnecessarily. An example of this that people tend to use all of the time is to use all of their boost while they're defending, which means that when they then move to counter-attack, they have no boost to move with. And so the other team just gets to keep possession and keeps pushing you in over and over again. You never really get the chance to move out of your own half. You have to understand that in a 3v3 situation, when you are defending, you don't really need to move all that much. You have 3 players on your team in your defensive half. Now, if you assume that each of these players can cover a small area around themselves, like they can, you will see that there isn't really much room left that is undefended. And so, you only really need to use your boost to help defend the area that you are covering. This means that when you are defending, you can very easily just drive and maybe tap boost every now and then while you're picking up pads. You can apply this area of coverage idea to 3s in general. You have 2 teammates who are covering their own space around the pitch. You do not need to use your boost to get over to the other side quickly because you can assume your teammate is covering that space. This works when people understand rotations and everyone is spaced out evenly, but more on that later. The other thing I mentioned when it comes to maintaining momentum was keeping speed without boost. This is one of the absolute basics of Rocket League, but something you don't really see being used properly until you get a bit higher up the ranks, maybe around the champ area. We all know that boost makes you go faster, and when the trail comes out the back end of your car, you know you're at your max speed, where you can then let go of your boost and maintain that speed by holding accelerate, as long as you don't take too harsh a turn or come into contact with the wall or a player. Despite this being common knowledge amongst the player base across all ranks, you would be very surprised at how people don't take advantage of this properly. It is something you really need to remember to work on bringing into your gameplay. Apart from that, the other ways to maintain your momentum without boost would be through flipping around the field and recovery mechanics. But that is a lot to cover in one video, and so I will make a new video soonish all about working on recovery mechanics and their importance. Now, I'd like to take this short break to address a few things. During this challenge, I forgot to write down just how much MMR I had gained and what my win-loss ratio was looking like until about 60 games in. So now, 2 months later, all the information I have to go off is that at 60 games, I had won 37 matches and then lost 23, and I was sitting at about 1550 MMR. And I know what you might be thinking. Wait a minute, you started this at 1495 MMR, and then you won 14 more games than you lost. How is it that you're only sitting at 1550 MMR when winning a game gives you anywhere between 7 to 11 MMR? Shouldn't you be at least 80 MMR up at this point? And to you I say, yes, I should be, but we have to deal with a little something I'm sure all of you are familiar with called an alt account. You see, in a normal game, I would win 9-ish MMR. But more recently, I have noticed that there is a massive wave of people who are making alt accounts through Epic Games, queuing up with their friends at a GC level, and then playing 3s. So instead of me going up against 3 accounts that are around 1500, I'm going up against 1 account at 1500 and 2 accounts that are sitting at 600 MMR despite being a 1500 player on their main account. Now here is the fun part. When I would win a game against these alt accounts, I would gain very little MMR because to Psionics, they are a much lower ranked player and they shouldn't win as much. It makes sense. I should win these all the time. I should gain no MMR because I should be beating these guys all the time. They're only 600 MMR. But when you lose 13 or 14 MMR because they are so much lower than you and you shouldn't have lost that game. Yes, despite winning 14 more games than I lost, I am still only up 55 MMR, which is the equivalent of around 6 games won under normal terms. Anyway, sorry for my outburst, just another reason why ranked can sometimes be a little bit annoying. Moving on. The next thing I took away from these games is that being fast is not important. What is important is being in the right position, as this will help support the team. As I said before, you do not need to travel as much around the pitch in threes, so focus more on being methodical and position in a way to help your teammates. Or in other words, don't be fast, be smart. And yes, I know this might seem like it goes against everything I just said on the last point, but they actually work hand in hand. Maintaining your speed and going fast for the sake of being fast are two very different things. If you watch gameplay from any pro player in a 3v3 situation, you will notice that they are following the game and positioning in a way to benefit the team. If their teammate goes up, they move in to fill the gap and add to their own coverage area. If both teammates push too far up, they will rotate back into a deeper defensive position. The goal of their playstyle isn't to make them score all the goals, it is to help the team. They aren't speeding all over the place trying to shoot whenever they can, they are moving with intent, filling gaps in their defense and playing a little bit more patient. Now in a 2v2 situation, you will have a lot more room to control the game with your own mechanics and your own pace of play, but in threes, you have to start learning to work around your teammates. And so, I have mentioned it before and I will mention it again, I believe the best way to get better at threes and to climb the ranks is to play passively. Think about it. Picture yourself in a 3v3 lobby. When was the last time you saw a teammate playing a little bit safer and not taking many risks? Now, think about how much easier it would be to play if you knew you had someone behind you just in case you made a mistake. They're ready to cover you. They're being that passive player for your team. Being that passive player for your team is going to enable them to make their own plays. You might not be the one scoring all of the goals and you might not be on the top of the leaderboard, but you are going to win more games and have an easier time helping your team to play at their best. The last thing I want to really touch on, because I saw it so much in my games and I'm going to be honest, it did get to me a little bit. I feel like people are forgetting basic rotations way too much. Playing passively is fine, but driving all the way back down to your own goal while you're attacking makes you useless for the team. Instead, you can very easily sit around the halfway mark and still be helpful in an offensive and defensive situation. Basic rotations are all you need to do well in this game. A basic rotation is using first, second, and third man. Now, to explain it a little bit, first man goes for the ball, second man is normally to the side or slightly behind the first man so they can go for the ball after a 50-50 or to go for a rebound. And the third man plays a little bit deeper in case the ball gets sent over the other two. Once the first man makes his play and can no longer go for the ball, he rotates back into the third man position. The second man takes the spot of the first man and the third man takes the spot of the second man. Simple, right? You all rotate into the next position. This is the basic rotation. Now, the reason why rotating all the way back to get boost in your own corner messes us up is if the first man makes his play and rotates out, there is no one to fill the position of the second man because you are way too far back. And in that time it takes for you to get up to the position of the second man and fill that slot, you have lost possession of the ball as no one was there to help your other teammate. Like I've said before in many other videos, maintaining pressure is the key to winning these 3v3 games. It is not about speed or trying to score every single shot. It is about making sure you are positioning in a way to help your team. And just like I said before, the absolute easiest way to do this is with the basic rotation. Now, despite this being a well-known aspect of the game, I still see rotations to be one of the big things that players lack, even in GC. It just seems like everyone kind of forgets about it and focuses on boost. And yeah, I do that from time to time as well, I'm not gonna lie, but it was never as eye-opening for me as it was during these 100 games. So, going back to the 100 games, how did I do? Well, in the end, I sat at 1531 MMR with 55 games won and 45 games lost, which, funnily enough, was the exact same win-to-loss ratio as my 100 games of 2s. A big thing about these games was that it took twice as long to record, as queue times could take up to 20 minutes at times because it seems like no one really likes playing 3s, and I can't blame them. But the time added did mean that I would play one game and then wait 10 minutes for another one, so I never really got into the flow of constantly playing ranked games. The other thing about Oceania is we have about 6 players playing at any given time, and so you're always up against the same group of people, and if one of them stops playing, it's GG. But I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, feel free to drop a like because it does help me and the channel out a bunch, and subscribe if you want to catch any future videos. Anyway, that's all from me. I'll see you next time.